Okay, I think we will get going. We're a couple of minutes past 10, but I'm sure lots of people will join us as we progress. So firstly, a big thank you to all of you that have registered and signed up and joined us this morning. This is our first live webinar to talk about the programme and all of the kind of current funding opportunities that I know lots of you are keen to explore in more depth, and obviously have the chance to ask some questions to the team. We've been running a series of webinars around Art Happens and Art Tickets, two of our digital platforms, which are ongoing. But we're super excited to sort of launch this into the realm of the programme, and hopefully it will be the first of many. So what I'm going to do is just spend a few minutes talking through the agenda for today. Luckily, there's no housekeeping to go through. I don't need to point into the direction of toilets at the Art Fund offices or anything like that. But what we are going to do today is spend sort of the first half of the hour with sort of a presentation from all of the team members that we've got here, who I'll introduce you to shortly. And then the second half will be a dedicated Q&A. So thank you to everybody that has submitted questions in advance. We've had time to go through some of those, and a lot of those will be answered by the team through sort of the course of the first half hour, just by the very nature of the content and things they'll be talking about and presenting. So what we will do, and obviously please at any point during the session add any of your questions into the comments box. We will answer things as we go along, as we spot them, but obviously, as I say, we've got a dedicated half-hour section at the end for us to go through those. So let's kick off with a few introductions. For those that don't know me, my name is Charlotte Wood. I'm our Senior Marketing Manager for Museums. So my role today is host and sort of facilitator amongst the team, but day to day I manage our National Art Pass network of museum partners. So I'm sure the majority of you guys, having registered and signed up through our museum bulletin and via emails, are already very much engaged and part of the network, and we probably work with you in many ways already, but I sort of represent the kind of other door through which you might be working with us. So all of the museum marketing support and the other digital services that my team manage on behalf of our museum partners. I'm going to go in the order of the speakers that I can see in the list below me. So I'm going to hand over to Emma just to make a quick introduction to herself.
Yeah. Hi everybody, my name is Emma Coleman. I'm Programmes Manager at Art Fund. I've been there for about 5 years, and I principally look after our programmes that support professional development and curatorial expertise, and that includes our professional network grants, which I'm going to be talking to you about today.
And then Eleanor.
Yep, great. Hello everybody, I'm Eleanor McGrath. I'm Head of Grants at the Art Fund. I've been with Art Fund for about 4 years, working on the acquisitions programme, but now heading up the Respond and Reimagine grants programme specifically as well, which I'll be talking about today.
And finally, Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Philp. I'm Director of Programme and Policy for Art Fund. So I've been doing that role for, gosh, a decade now, and I work with Emma and Eleanor and the rest of the great team at Art Fund to develop new funding programmes, develop our relationship with the sector and support the sector both through grant making and also through advocacy. But for the purposes of today, you have to pretend that I'm Robert Dingle, who can't be with us, unfortunately, but Robert manages the Small Project Grants programme, and I am standing in for him today to talk to you a little bit more about small project grants.
Great, thanks everyone. So let's swiftly move to the agenda. So hopefully you guys all know why you are here and what you signed up for. But today we will be introducing and talking specifically about 3 of our programmes of funding that really are there to help museums and galleries come through the COVID-19 crisis. So as the team mentioned, we will be kicking off with our new Respond and Reimagine grants. So Eleanor will talk us through those. Small project grants, which Sarah will be talking about. Professional network grants, which Emma will be talking about. I will give a sort of a very kind of top line intro to kind of the wider ways that you could be or probably already are working with us, and the opportunities to grow your audience and get those visitors back through the doors. And then, as I said, we'll end with a Q&A session. So moving on to the programme. So our full programme has been obviously recently informed by the survey that we undertook with the sector. So a big thank you to any of you that were involved and took part in that sector consultation, which feels like, well, it was a long time ago now, back in April. But essentially our response to that has been based around 4 key areas that emerged as challenges that you told us about, and the impact that the COVID-19 crisis has had. So the 4 key areas that have emerged really from that piece of research are around collections, digital, reopening and audiences, and finally workforce. And on the right of the slide here, you can see a sort of very top line summary of kind of all of the wider opportunities that we are now offering, either be it a brand new grant like the Respond and Reimagine, or how we've adapted and pivoted existing programs to meet kind of one or more of those 4 exact needs. So all of the kind of full program of support can be found at artfund.org/supporting museums. But just as a kind of top line summary, it's obviously the Respond and Reimagine grants, our existing funding programs, and again how we've responded and adapted and pivoted those in relation to the COVID crisis, strategic partnerships that we've formed, the professional development side, so this kind of really feeds into the workforce, and a lot of the additional assets and resources we've been creating. Again, there'll be a few examples of those today, and some of the free digital services that we have kind of always had as part of our offer for you guys, but obviously there's been kind of a huge increase in demand and need for certain aspects of it around ticketing, for example, which with the ambition of obviously getting people back through the door once you start to begin reopening. So that's kind of a very top line intro. I'm now going to hand over to Eleanor, who is going to talk you through the Respond and Reimagine grants.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. And so from looking at the attendees list, I know that there are a few people in the audience that have either submitted an application to this for our first funding round, and we're due to make the first decisions on those at the end of this week. There might be people that are already partway through preparing an application for the second round, and there might be people brand new to it who are just kind of here to find out a little bit more about what it is and how you can think about it. So what I'll do is I'll just run through the slides, which gives an overview of the programme, and then I will respond to the specific questions about Respond and Reimagine, which we've received in advance of the webinar. And then, of course, at the end, we can ask some more kind of detailed questions and have a bit more of a conversation if there are things that have been prompted as we go. So Respond and Reimagine grants, as Charlotte said, this is our programme that has been sort of developed directly in response to what the sector has told us that your priorities are. So the new grants programme is designed to help museums and galleries and cultural organisations respond to the immediate challenges connected to the COVID-19 crisis, and offer support to adapt and reimagine ways of working for the future. I think I would try to say that it's kind of built in the ethos that yes, times are tough, times are challenging, but there is also perhaps a note of optimism in thinking differently, or trying something that might be a little bit different that could have a longer term benefit for your organisation. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about what a good approach would be in thinking about the programme. So we have allocated £1.5 million over 3 funding rounds during 2020. The grants available are between £10,000 and £50,000, and we can consider 100% funding. And I would say that most of the applications that we've received for the first round were all 100% or close to 100% funding requests. So who can apply? UK public museums, galleries, historic houses, libraries and archives that ordinarily would have space for the public to visit and experience the visual arts or other object-based collections. And although we are the Art Fund, that can also include natural history, maritime and transport, archaeology and social history as well, and can demonstrate that you usually operate to best practice standards or have a good track record in delivering high quality public activity. So we're not excluding organisations that are not accredited, but we are looking for evidence that you can demonstrate how you do meet good standards. And we'll also consider visual arts agencies or visual arts festivals that can also demonstrate opportunity for the public to see great art and also demonstrate good quality public activity. We have had quite a few requests from organisations that are perhaps more sort of like music, theatre, dance, and unfortunately it's out of scope for us as a funder, even though we really appreciate what those organisations also bring to sort of like the cultural landscape. So what we're looking for, as I mentioned, the aim of the programme is really to think about how you're going to deliver projects or activity that will provide a positive change in offering new and improved ways of working during and as part of the longer term response to the COVID-19 crisis. So there's a specific question on the application form that really asks you to respond to that question. So in delivering particular activity, tell us how it's very specifically related to COVID-19 and how you're responding to it. And I think where pitfalls have been is where people are thinking about some great activities, some great programming ideas, but they haven't really connected it back to this overall aim. And in normal circumstances, they're the kind of things that we would absolutely love to fund and love to think about, but this has got a very specific COVID-19 focus. So please do make sure that you're thinking in this area. So we're then talking about these 4 priority areas. So these 4 priorities areas, audiences, collections, digital and workforce, these came out of the sector survey and so forth. So again, there's a question in the application form which asks you to define how your activity connects to a minimum of one of these areas. So you could provide a really great project that is purely focused on audiences or audience development, or you could do one that crosses into different areas. So when we're talking about these things, I'll just give you a top line statement about how we've been thinking about what these 4 priority areas are. So when we say audiences, we want you to connect with audiences now, including online, and be supported to encourage visitors to return as you reopen, including helping manage the practical and financial challenges of changes to access and operations. When we talk about collections, we say we want to support the future of your collections through exhibition programming, touring and research, safeguarding collections at risk and helping you adapt and improve how collections are managed and cared for. For digital, we say we want to support you to develop adaptable digital skills and the infrastructure needed to open up collections and reach new and existing audiences online now and in the future. And for workforce, we say we want to support you and your colleagues as an expert and passionate workforce through a period of uncertainty and change, and encourage collaboration and the sharing of resources and expertise. And there's a question on the application form where it asks you to define outcomes in relation to these areas. And you can define those yourselves. So if you're looking at audiences, we've provided some suggested outcomes in our guidance note, which include, for example, your core audiences remain engaged and will return when you reopen, or you'll have the opportunity to engage new audiences online or in person, or perhaps you will be able to understand any changes to your audience profile and develop new strategies in response, or your organisation will be better equipped to manage changes to visitor access and operations. So these are some of the mid to long term things that might be expected as a result of the activity that you deliver. And I would say in your application, how you talk about that is really, really important in terms of helping us understand what your project activity would really be helping with. So if you're looking at the application form, that's a really key area to look at. And I'm happy to kind of talk a bit more about what would make a good response to that question a bit later on, if that's helpful. So yeah, and then we also need stuff that you would expect that we need. So we need a budget that tells us what costs are involved and how you've maybe reached those costs. So it doesn't need to be specifically detailed, but I would say any cost that's above £1,000 or so, we would expect to know what it's for, how you've calculated it. That could be informed by a quote, prior experience from suppliers that you've worked with. If it's a salary cost, it could be a proportion of time. So if you're including any salary lines, telling us if it's a part-time or full-time equivalent role, and how long it would be for. So it's always a bit disconcerting when you see in a budget an assistant or an officer role and it's got £9,000 against it, because you hope to yourself that's calculated based on an adjusted salary over time or a part-time role, but it's difficult for us to know. And thinking about what costs are reasonable is helpful to us in terms of understanding whether or not you've planned your projects and is it feasible, and are we confident that you're responding to good guidance and so forth when planning your activities. We also need a timeline with some key milestones. So because of the nature of this funding, we're expecting that activities won't span longer than 12 months, but there is some flexibility to this. This is not funding that's designed to be core funding over a period of time. It's designed to be something that's going to help you in the short term, which could have a longer term benefit. But I would say that, we're not being hard and fast on that, but that's the expectation when you're thinking about what the scope of this funding is. And then also some illustrative images or material that you feel best represents your organisation. So under this programme, we are working with a lot of organisations that we have received funding applications from before, but we're also speaking to organisations we don't know very well or haven't funded. So things that can just kind of give us a brief snapshot into your work, your activity, what you do. And if you are new to us, when you go into the assessment phase, a member of the team might be in touch with you just to ask a few more questions about your organisation, which could be, your latest accounts, how you're set up, what previous projects you've worked on, who you've partnered with, just so we get a real understanding of you and your organisation. So what can you apply for? So the emphasis is on applying for what you need, but be really clear about why these are the right costs or activities to meet your organisation's priorities and needs. So I put here, you can apply for equipment, you can include staff costs. That can be full cost recovery for an existing member of staff, recruitment of a new post. It can include also bringing a member of the team back from furlough. Consultancy costs, systems or technical infrastructure, so improvements to your CRM database or your collection systems. Training, so if you've got a key member of the team that's maybe moving over to a digital role, what support do they need to actually deliver that? Programming events and exhibitions, absolutely. These things are fundable and included, but I would encourage you to think about not just treating this funding as maybe core continuation costs, but thinking about how this particular program, event or exhibition would really help you in relation to the program aim and the outcomes that you're hoping will help your organisation. And I've included here also adapting existing buildings and facilities. So the nature of the funding, £10,000 to £50,000, you could squeeze in a small capital project with that amount of money, but it's not really the focus for us as a funder. So you are allowed to think about, if you've got an existing space and you're thinking about changing it or modifying it so it could accommodate a new form of activity event or income generation, so creation of a new shop or a cafe space, or your collection store is in dire straits and needs some help, that would be eligible, but I wouldn't encourage you to start calling the architect and making plans for a very small addition to the museum or space that you work in. So as I mentioned, we've just had our first funding round and we're making the decisions on that later this week. There are 2 further funding rounds available. So the next one is on the 17th of August and you'll get a decision towards the end of September. And then round 3, you apply in Monday the 12th of October and we'll give you a decision in mid-November. And we're trying to be quite speedy and responsive in how we're getting funding out. It is quite challenging for us and the team at the moment. So if we're not as kind of immediately responsive, we're trying to get to everybody. But yeah, do bear those dates in mind. And we're also thinking ahead to 2021 about what other funding will continue. So if you don't feel quite ready at present, there will be opportunities next year as well. So the next steps in terms of, you know, what you should do if you're interested in applying, we're asking people to tell us. So we're trying to sort of map out how much demand there is going to be across the different funding rounds. So if you're planning on applying, just drop us a quick email to programs@artfund.org, indicating which round you plan to apply for and how much funding you might be seeking. The first port of call is to really read and try and digest the guidance notes, and then if something's unclear or you just want to clarify something, again, if you email the team with the central email address, we're trying to get through as many inquiries as possible at the moment to make sure that you've got the information that you need to be able to apply. And for all of our applications for funding, you need an My Art Fund log-on, which you can find through our website, and that's where you'll find all of the funding opportunities available. Okay, so what I thought I would do is I thought I'd just pull out a couple of the kind of advanced questions that we've received in relation to this. So thank you to those that have come with some questions, some really interesting and detailed questions. So I'm just going to run through them. So firstly, from Caroline Francis King at the Museum of East Asian Art, who says, has a question about, we have applied to the Art Fund for the Respond and Reimagine grants. If we're unsuccessful, can we still apply for the Southwest Museum Development Recovery Grant Programme, which is also funded by Art Funds? So yes, we have offered £280,000 to the Museum Development Network, which includes the 9 English Museum Development Regional Programmes, Museums Galleries Scotland, the Welsh Federation of Museums and Art Galleries in Wales, and Northern Ireland Museums Council, to offer recovery grants of up to £10,000. So Art Fund is partnering, but we're not directly involved in taking decisions on those funding pots. So in terms of applying to, if you're unsuccessful with us, I don't think it should be a barrier to you in applying to museum network funding, providing you meet the various eligibility requirements that they have in place. And on the other side, if you have received funding from those sources, that's actually not a barrier to coming to us for funding as well. You know, we will consider applications where you've had some funding from other emergency funders, but you've just got to be really clear about where that funding got you to and where a Respond and Reimagine grant would take you. So where does it begin and end? And I think that's fair, because even organisations that have received emergency funding, that's going to take you to a particular point, but it might not be able to make a specific change that might give you a longer term benefit. So absolutely, we don't feel that there's a conflict there for us. So Claire from Historic Environment Scotland has asked a couple of questions. The first is about funding sources and can furlough be considered a funding source? So what I would do in putting a budget together is I would break down income into cash, so actual money or available budget that you have to contribute towards projects or activities, which could include internal sources or potentially other fundraising or donations. And then I would separate out anything else that you think is a sign of contribution towards the project. So if it's calculation of a member of staff's time, or a partner lending you or providing equipment as non-cash contributions. And I would say that as a funder, we do look at this, and we do like to see that people are thinking about, if they don't have cash resource, what are they actually contributing? But it's not hard and fast, and it's not something that's going to prevent us from offering you a grant. It's just helpful to see how you're thinking about resourcing and the feasibility for what you're trying to deliver. And then Claire's second question was about, could you give a bit more guidance on what you mean by risk as opposed to impact? So in the application form for Respond and Reimagine, there are 2 questions which concern, firstly, the impact of COVID-19 on your organisation, and secondly, which risks have you identified for your organisation? And I would say impact concerns what has happened in relation to COVID-19. And so for the most part, as I'm sure you all appreciate, it's not been good impact, it's mostly been negative impact, you know, loss of income, eating into reserves, lots of, you know, troubling things, you know, staff redundancies on the horizon, lots of bad impacts. But equally, there are organisations that have identified opportunity within what's happened to them. So for example, an applicant had identified that despite everything that was going on, they repositioned themselves as becoming the local village shop and catering offer in a small village in the southeast. So that's an impact, but it's not necessarily a negative one. And then risk would concern the things that may have pre-existed for your organisation pre-COVID. So I think the crisis has obviously exacerbated things, but I think certain organisations will have been thinking about other risks before the pandemic. So really, we're asking what risk existed pre-COVID, but also what risk might now be caused by COVID. So the organisational risks which may not yet have happened, but could down the line. So that's how I'd think about those two questions. Moving on, so there's quite a few. Victoria from the Classic Boat Museum, you asked about the budget. Hopefully I covered what your questions were about the detail expected in the budget, but just to reiterate, I think we're looking for essentially, if it's a cost above £1,000, I'd expect to know what that cost is for, and I would expect to know how you might have reached it. But if you're talking about, do we want an itemized list of, you know, if you're buying new equipment for digital and the costs are incrementally 400, 500, I don't think we need to know specifically the detail. Just that larger costs, I think it's helpful to know how it's broken down. And then Victoria's second question was around supporting documentation with plans to submit articles of association, financial statements, and whether or not we would also like to see details in terms of curatorial concepts for new exhibition layouts beyond what's required in the application form. So I would say we welcome any supporting documents that you wish to provide that you think help illustrate your organisation and your activities or your strategy. That's particularly helpful if you are a first-time applicant to us, as I was explaining. I think it's kind of for you to determine, but in the assessment process, if we kind of look and we think actually we've got a few more questions about your organisation, as I said, we'll follow up if we need some additional information. So I think maybe just focus on what you think is most helpful, what's most useful. Don't add loads of attachments because it's unlikely that we will look at all of them. So I think just focus on what the priority information is that you think we should be aware of. And then we've got Becky from Britain Pears Arts, the Red House Museum. So your question is, given the likelihood that many organisations will be taking similar approaches, such as digitising collections and creating interactive online platforms, can you outline what you will be looking for and what you would expect organisations to realistically present that will set a successful application apart from an unsuccessful one? So yeah, we are absolutely seeing similar approaches for types of activity, and I think that's to be expected given the focus on digital and audiences particularly. Those are kind of where a lot of people are focusing their attention. So I think for me, what sets a good application apart is whether what you're proposing feels like a thoughtful response that actually responds to some of the problems that you might have identified when you're talking about the negative impacts of COVID on your organisation. So you know, really focusing on that aim of the programme, so the positive change in offering new or adapted ways of working in response to COVID. And I think where applicants fall down is where they are producing what looks to be like a very interesting digital project, but it hasn't really couched it in the aim of the programme. So therefore it feels like it's a good thing, a positive thing to do, but it might not actually have the meaningful change that you want. So if you're building a digital platform and you're not considering how you then might promote that it's even there, I think that would be a sort of a bit of a mistake. Like, you really need it to sort of feel like a very prioritized and focused response to the pandemic. Louise from the Creswell Heritage Trust. So yes, you're applying for the Respond and Reimagine grants. So could you provide some clarification on what you want from applicants in relation to the following question? Tell us how your project will connect to the priority funding areas. So as I mentioned, the 4 priority areas are audiences, collections, digital and workforce. And there is a question on the application form, which is, tell us how your project will connect to the priority funding areas and what outcomes you might expect to see as a result of this project. So to answer this question well, I would just break it down very simply into which priority areas your project is focusing on, so digital, and then discuss outcomes in relation to your proposed activity. So if you're building a new e-commerce platform, what outcomes would be related to that? What would be the benefit of doing that? And then I'd move on to any other outcomes that you have in connection to that. So I mentioned that we do have some example outcomes in our guidance note, which I read out some of those earlier, but you are able to define your own. But that's a very key question, and I would spend a bit of time on it. So Vicky from Aspects, would a successful application to Respond and Reimagine grants make us ineligible to apply for small project grant for a different projects in the next 12 months? So at the moment, because of the current capacity of our team, we are advising people to apply to either small project grants, which Sarah will talk about shortly, or Respond and Reimagine grants. So pick one direction or the other when you're putting an application in, but I imagine we will relax this in future, but at the moment there's just quite a lot of demand, so we want to make sure that you're focusing on one funding application at a time. We haven't determined a cut-off point in terms of the future, like when you can reapply, so I can't give an answer on that at present, but I imagine that we'll probably relax the one way or the other advice at the moment, so we can continue to update when we have decided what's going to work best for applicants, but also for us in terms of managing incoming requests for funding. And then Vicky's next question was, how many applications have we had for the first round of Respond and Reimagine? And how many so far are you expecting for the second round? So yes, we had a very high number of applications for the first round. We had 114 applications, and I would expect a similar number for round 2. It might not be quite as high. I think we definitely experienced a high bounce when we announced it in terms of inquiries and so forth. But what I would say is that we will be focusing very much on how to best direct unsuccessful applicants. So, we will be giving clear feedback for unsuccessful applicants, which will either encourage you to apply for a future funding round, which might be with some small adjustments to the application, or actually say, do you know what, you might be better off thinking about something for our small project grants program, or we might discourage you in applying or potentially even signpost you to other funders. But it's really our aim to try and direct and support you as best we can to avoid your energy being spent on lots of applications without feeling like you're making particular progress. So really, we do want to be trying to help people in the best way we can. I think it's really helpful to just remind ourselves in terms of expectation management. Art Fund is a smaller funder here in a much larger ecosystem of grants, and I imagine that's actually probably quite frustrating because it's sort of like playing lots of kind of applications, putting them out there, some of them successful, some of them not, and I think we really appreciate that. So we're trying to make it as easy and transparent as we can. And I think those were all the ones that came through in advance. In terms of the Q&A, I wonder if it's best to move on with the other presentations and then we answer the other Q&A that have come through at the end, if that's helpful to people.
Great, thanks Eleanor, and we can always hang on for another 5 or so minutes if we do overrun, if that's okay with everybody else. So moving over to Sarah and small project grants.
Hello. Do I need to request control, or have you given me control, or?
I'm going to be your cursor, so I will.
Oh, are you? Oh, excellent. Okay, one less thing for me to think about. All right. Okay. Well, so hi, everyone, and again, pretend I'm Rob. So I am going to talk to you about small project grants, which I don't manage. That's Rob, but I do sit on the panel that looks at applications. So I'm hoping that I will be able to be helpful this morning. So small project grants. This programme provides funding to help museums, galleries and visual arts organisations act on good ideas and test new ways of working that will benefit their audiences. So we launched this programme originally in 2019, and these grants are designed to be a low risk, light touch way for you to test new thinking in your organisation. Along with Respond and Reimagine, they have the broadest range of eligibility criteria of any of our programmes, And they're also a way for us at Art Fund to get to know and to develop our support for a greater diversity of organisations across the art, museum and heritage sectors. So, through this programme, we encourage projects that align with one of the 4 strands of what is in normal times our funding programme. And those 4 strands are building collections, to do with your museum or art galleries' permanent collections, shaping futures, which is thinking very much about professional development within the arts and museum sectors, reaching audiences and engaging with your communities and making connections across your communities and across your own professional networks. We particularly welcome applications through small project grants, which focus on audience development, equality, diversity and inclusion, activity outside of London, and new partnerships, whether that's new relationships for the applicants or if you're maybe a first-time applicant to us. And we want these grants to be very light touch and easy to access. We want them to be low risk but enabling. Enough money to get something off the ground, to get something moving for you. So we've set the upper limit at £10,000, and we will consider 100% funding if that will get a project off the ground, if that will get something started. But we're equally happy to see match funding or other contributions. We're really flexible with this programme. You can submit an application at any time, but we ask that you allow 8 weeks between submission and the time that you require a decision. And I would say particularly at the moment, that's really important because of the volume of applications that we're seeing. So who can apply? We welcome applications from UK public museums, galleries, historic houses, libraries and archives that have a space for the public to visit and enjoy collections. So that could be permanent galleries, temporary exhibition spaces, or spaces for public engagement, education and events. Alongside the visual arts, we're Art Fund, so I think sometimes this does confuse people, but we are very, very keen and will support projects connected with the display or sharing of collections of all forms, including natural history, science and social history. And we will also consider applications from non-venue based visual arts organisations, but we would expect that the main activity and focus of your application would have a public outcome, and that might be a festival, for example, or an events programme. We also ask that you can operate to best practice standards or have a good track record in delivering high quality public activity. And ways that you could show this, for example, could be because your organisation takes part in the UK Museum Accreditation Scheme, or you could otherwise share examples of recent projects you've delivered, reference partners that you've worked with, or recognition or other professional awards that you've received. Unfortunately, we can't support artists or individual practitioners, and as Eleanor mentioned with Respond and Reimagine grants, we sadly can't support organisations that are concerned with theatre, music, dance or other art forms. So what can you apply for? We will consider grants for any type of activity, provided the organisation can demonstrate its impact and benefits, and how it will align with one or more of our 4 programme areas, which I referenced earlier. We have designed this funding to be broad enough to encourage innovative and entrepreneurial thinking, and we're really happy to support experimental projects. So these might be projects that you're not quite sure how they're going to work, or they might not quite work out in the way you anticipate, or which you might be thinking about and viewing as a pilot for potential later activity, which could be scaled up, repeated or adjusted for a different setting or context, for example. I always think it's helpful to think about small project grants as kind of an imaginative piece of action research. And if you do that, I think that's a good mindset in which to approach your application. So to give some examples of the kinds of activity we can support, and we're really open and really flexible. Exhibitions and public programming, that could be from planning right through to delivery. It could include artist fees. For example, you could be working with an artist on a new commission or an installation. It could include production costs, marketing costs, or the costs of developing and delivering an accompanying public programme. Learning and education programmes, so an example could be working with access organisations on staff training or programme development to create an offer that is more accessible or broadens the audiences and communities that you can reach. Or maybe if you're a museum working towards reopening, you might want to explore how to develop a blended learning programme with both online and perhaps even, fingers crossed, in-person activities. Community engagement and participation. So you might want to work with community groups on co-curation projects or museum takeovers. For example, costs could include their project management, as well as the practical costs of holding workshops, and that might include paying facilitator or even covering catering and transport costs for participants. Developing curatorial and artistic residences. So an example there could be paid opportunities within your organisation for groups that are underrepresented, perhaps in the sector. And last but by no means least, digital projects, as Eleanor mentioned. Also in small project grants, this has been a particular focus for, I would say, most of our applicants since lockdown. And in this case, our grants have been going towards helping organisations pivot to delivering their programming digitally and finding ways to continue to engage their audiences whilst they're closed. And just on the topic of COVID-19, and in this quite extraordinarily challenging situation that many of us find ourselves in, we are particularly keen for small project grants to help support organisations to find ways to continue to engage with their public during periods of closure and as they work towards reopening. And what we hope is that the relatively low grant amounts, quick turnaround, and the desire to support creativity and experimentation through these grants can be really helpful for organisations who are trying new things. You know, for example, a lot of organisations haven't necessarily worked digitally in quite this way before. And we also know that many, if not most, organisations out there are finding things exceptionally hard. So we have relaxed and flexed some of the grant criteria and will consider supporting core costs as well. And that could include equipment or staffing costs. And that might be, for example, bringing staff off furlough to help deliver a project, or recruiting freelance support where you don't have in-house expertise. But I should probably also add that demand for small projects has increased hugely in the last few months. And so we have been quite oversubscribed. And although we've increased the amount of funding available, we will very sadly not be able to support everything. So hopefully by now, you won't be surprised to hear that the range of projects we've supported to date has varied hugely. We've got several case studies up on our website and in our guidance document, which I hope might provide a little bit more, it will illustrate a little bit more the range of things that we fund. But I'd like to highlight one successful project to finish. So in response to COVID-19, Ditchling Museum of Art and Craft applied to us for a small project grant to help realise their Create to Relate project. And this was an online programme of talks, workshops and events led by artists, craftspeople and art historians. And it was aimed at their audiences who were unable to visit during lockdown. It was a brand new initiative and particularly focused on existing audiences, local people and families especially, to help them continue to engage with the museum and its collection, as well as they wanted to try and provide a means of connecting to those members of those communities that were self-isolating or particularly vulnerable. And I know from conversations with a lot of museum professionals that reaching those very vulnerable communities and individuals that you know really value your museum service has been a particular concern during lockdown. And so this was Ditchling's project to try and mitigate some of that worry and reach those people. It also hoped to reach Ditchling's 13,500 Instagram followers and hopefully to connect to some new audiences through social media. So our grant covered fees for artists participating in the programme, the costs associated with marketing it, really crucially, how are you going to reach those audiences if you're not marketing it, and funding to bring their comms manager off furlough to provide that crucial communication support. So it had over 65,000 views across Instagram and Twitter and attracted nearly 300 new Facebook followers. And really interestingly and positively, the team at Ditchling, it's also helped them to develop new skills in creating multimedia content for online broadcast, and really good news that they plan to develop the project into a digitally integrated programme for the longer term. So it ticked an awful lot of those boxes in terms of how we think about what small project grants might be able to help museums achieve. And I think that's it from me. I'm conscious of time, so I think maybe we'll go straight on to professional network grants. I hope that I've answered quite a lot of the kind of queries maybe that people had in advance, but obviously happy to answer more as part of Q&A.
Great. Yeah, so I'm going to chat about professional network grants. I'm aware that we've got some really great questions coming in, and I want to make sure that we've got time to address those. So I'm going to go through this swiftly. So if we can go on to the next slide, Charlotte. Thank you. So the professional network grants aim to support the wide sharing of expertise, skills and knowledge across the museums, galleries and arts sector for the benefit of the workforce, professional practice, collections and audiences. And we want to do this by supporting subject specialist networks and other curatorial and professional networks. Next slide, please. So in terms of funds available, you can apply to us for up to £15,000. The grants are available at two levels, so small grants and large grants. Requests up to £5,000 are considered a small grant. You can apply for these at any time. If you're looking to apply for a larger amount, up to £15,000, we've got 3 deadlines a year for that level of grant, and the next one is coming up in September. We've made £300,000 available through the programme this year, and in fact we've put more money in the pot in response to the situation with COVID-19 in acknowledgement of the fact that these grants could be a really key resource to help networks boost their support for their members during this time. And we're particularly keen that this funding helps networks continue to engage with each other remotely and offer opportunities to network with colleagues and peers. Because I think we're all missing that at the moment. So in terms, excuse me, in terms of who we can support through the programme, it's designed to support subject specialist networks, SSNs, including those recognised and previously funded by Arts Council, together with other curatorial and professional networks. So our broad definition for networks, as you can see on the slide, is communities of museum and arts professionals who share interests in curatorial specialisms, collections of all kinds, and exhibition or museum-based practices. I realise that's sort of quite a broad definition. I thought it might be helpful for me to give a few examples. So we've previously supported established SSNs, including the Army Museums Ogilvie Trust and Understanding British Portraits Network. We've supported networks that have recently been established, which focus on particular areas or kinds of collections or heritage, including the Video Games Heritage Society and the Queer Heritage and Collections Network, 2 recently established groups. We've supported networks that focus on different areas of museum practice, such as GEM, the Group for Education in Museums, as well as networks focusing on specific types of curatorial practice, such as the Social Art Network, which supports curators interested in socially engaged art practice. So it's not just about collection specialisms, it's about broader museum practice as well. As I've mentioned, we can support emerging networks that have recently been formed. We will ask you to share your mission statement or longer term objectives, just so that we fully understand how you plan to operate the network and how you're hoping to support the sector. And a key thing to bear in mind is that our grants need to be paid to formally constituted not-for-profit organisations. So they can't be paid to individuals, for example. So if you are a new emerging network and you don't have a bank account yet, you'll need to identify an organisation that can act as the recipient of the funds for you. So this could be a founding partner of the network, a museum that you work in, or similar. In terms of what the grants can support, we want to help networks develop and expand their activities, share knowledge and skills, collaborate with each other and with their audiences, test new ideas and different ways of working, and think about tangible public outcomes as well. So how the network can support their members in interacting with and engaging their audiences. So looking at what specifically you can apply to us for, I will run through these, and I'll also give some recent examples. So a grant could cover workshops, seminars, and conferences that enable knowledge sharing and examples of best practice. And at this time, particularly, this can include adapting your network's existing activities to be able to offer them digitally. So you could apply to us for Zoom membership, for fees for speakers or facilitators, and so on. It could be toolkits, case studies, other resources that will increase specialist knowledge in the sector and help museums better use and interpret their collections. So supporting museum professionals who are working with collections that they might not have specialist knowledge of. Development opportunities that improve professional skills. So this could be activity to help build confidence in areas that might be more unfamiliar for network members. Be it developing public programming or digital content. So an example is we recently supported GEM in delivering training to museum professionals who work with schools and families to boost their skills in engaging remotely with those groups and offering blended digital and in-person activities, which is obviously really important at the moment with museums facing new and completely different challenges as a result of COVID. It could be advice, training, or mentoring to support new routes into the sector. So we supported the Understanding British Portraits Network to offer a paid fellowship to support their conference on decolonising portrait interpretation. This was a fellowship that was advertised to students and early career professionals, and it gave the opportunity for them to help develop the conference programming and work alongside a brilliant mentor. It could be digital projects that help networks more effectively share expertise and resources so that a wider range of museums and curators can benefit. So developing the content on your website to make it a more valuable resource for your network, for example. And as I've said, we also support the development of new and pilot networks. So to give an example of a recent professional network grant, we had a grant application from the National Trust to develop the Queer Heritage and Collections Network alongside partners English Heritage, Historic England, Historic Royal Palaces, and the University of Leicester. So amongst those founding members, there were hundreds of historic properties represented across the UK. And the network is hoping to provide peer support for people in the UK working with LGBT+ collections and histories. So they had a grant of almost £15,000, which will support a freelance project manager to oversee the development of the network over the next year. The practical costs of a launch event and a workshop to identify the needs of the sector and to develop the network's mission statement. It also covers training in delivering LGBT+ tours, which will benefit 40 heritage professionals from both within and outside the founding organisations. And also the development of a toolkit to benefit the broader sector. And finally, the grant also funded research to map current practice, knowledge and resources in this area, which will help the network identify where there are gaps and help determine what activity they might want to offer in the future. This was a really strong application because the network had a clear idea of where they could offer benefit and support to the sector and a solid plan for how they'd do so. So hopefully a useful example of the kinds of costs that you can come to us for and the sorts of activities that we want to support. So how to apply? This is for both small project grants and professional network grants. Both programs are open throughout the year. The only deadlines, as mentioned, are for large requests to network grants. For smaller requests and for the small project grants, you can submit your application at any time. At the moment, we're sort of generally turning those the grant applications around within 1 month. The application process is really similar for both programs. The form is light touch. We'll ask you to sort of outline your proposed project and the impact that it will have on your network or your organization and its audiences, and how it aligns with our aims. And we will also ask you to provide a budget and a time frame for when you'll deliver the project. As with all our programs, we've got guidance documents on our websites for both of these programs, which go into a lot more detail than we've given today. And we've also, as Sarah mentions, we've got case studies of recently supported projects, and we do encourage you to take a look at those as a first step. If you're interested in applying, we then ask you to drop us an email. Tell us a little bit about your project. We're happy to discuss applications and provide guidance where we can. If your proposal is really straightforward and a good fit, we're likely to say, sounds good, go ahead with an application. If we've got any thoughts or feedback on how your project could sort of better fit the program, then we can provide that to you. As with all our other programs, the applications come through our online portal, so you just need to log on or register. There's been some other questions come through, but hopefully I'll have an opportunity to answer those in a moment. So I'm going to just hand over to Charlotte.
Thank you, Emma. In the interest of time, I'm just going to whiz through a couple of my slides very quickly, because I know primarily you're all here to have your questions answered by the programs team, and obviously this is kind of a wider extension of how we work with our partner museums and galleries. So just to sort of position kind of the route you would take coming through kind of, I guess, the funding door and working with us, and just showcasing really how that sits within everything else that we do. So my remit is very much to look at bringing as many visitors from our National Art Pass membership as possible through your doors. Obviously the programs team are here to support your ambitions through that funding, and obviously your role being within this kind of virtuous circle is to create those experiences that encourage museums, encourage visitors to come. So I really sort of want to kind of position that you may be kind of coming to us for funding for one particular thing, but actually what you're gaining from that is the opportunity to extend all of the opportunities that you work with us through the network, and you know, to maximise and take advantage, I guess, of all of those things, rather than it just kind of being seen as just on the funding side. So just a very top line summary, all of this stuff is available on our website, and my team can obviously help answer any other queries you have. But in terms of free digital resources, obviously, as I mentioned, majority of you are probably already in our National Art Pass network. If you're not, there's a great opportunity for you to join the network. There's no cost association other than offering our members a benefit so that we can encourage those visitors. The members get a huge amount of value from their membership, but also for you to reach those new audiences. So we have 159,000 members. We know they're obviously very, very keen to step back through those doors. We're working on a huge program of content at the moment to make sure that we're clearly promoting and advertising all of the venues that are reopening. A lot of manual work going on behind the scenes at the moment, because obviously this is something we've not had to deal with before. But you know, what I really do encourage you to do, and if it's not your role, to your marketing team, is to make sure that you're telling us about changes in timings, reopening dates if it's still kind of to come in the future, and all of that is in your kind of self-service portal, which is My Art Fund. So the space where you'd go to apply for your grants, change your venue details, tell us if something's changed, or request a login if you haven't got that. The other two major kind of platforms that sit within my team, which you may or may not have heard about, are Art Happens, which is our crowdfunding platform, and Art Tickets, which unsurprisingly has seen unprecedented demand because it's a free ticketing platform available for museums and galleries to use, and it really is supporting at the moment a huge number of venues with their reopening and kind of managing capacity and time ticketing. So these are kind of just a couple of the examples where we're really responding to those sector needs and obviously seeing a huge appetite for it. As mentioned, lots of resources on the website in terms of professional development, case studies, you've seen a few today, and obviously any future kind of series of webinars like we're hosting now will be posted on there, as well as all of our reports and research that we've been doing, obviously in response to the COVID crisis. just another kind of point of communication. Obviously, the team have advised that, you know, anything that's specific to a particular program, please go through the programs inbox. We've got a dedicated space for that. But for anything more generally about working with us, being in the network, maybe it's a technical query you're having with your account, then you can channel that all to museums@artfund.org, which my team will pick up as soon as they can. So I also say this is a kind of plea because we are obviously absolutely maxed at the moment. Lots of requests, lots of things coming in, so please be patient with us. We will be responding to everything as best we can. It's just a huge volume at the moment. So if everybody is okay to just hang on for a little bit, I apologise we've overrun, but as you can tell, there is lots of information to get through, lots of things we want to share. I think we've had a few responses, obviously, from the team as we've gone along in the Q&A chat box, but if you are happy to carry on and stay on for maybe 10-15 minutes with the team, please post those in the Q&A box right now, and we will do our best to answer everything that we can. Obviously there was a few that we were going to recover, so I don't know if anyone in the team wants to kick off with anything that wasn't addressed from the pre-submitted questions.
Yep, so I'll take one from Claire that's come through on the chat, which is, would being able to include some kinds of art emphasis into a Respond and Reimagine grant application make it more attractive to the Art Fund, or does the collection area not have an impact? Thank you. So yeah, I mean, I would say that with the priority areas, we obviously have got one that is very focused on collections, but we are saying, you know, there doesn't need to be an artistic emphasis there. We will support broader collections. We sort of draw the line at sort of collections which are primarily archival or can't be well displayed or viewed, and that's just because of what our priorities are as a funder. But in terms of, you know, Respond and Reimagine grant, you don't have to have an art emphasis or even a collections emphasis. You're very welcome to think a bit more broadly about your organizational needs, and that can be like, you know, very commercially focused, or, you know, about kind of audience development work, and that those two don't always need to connect right into the collections. So art is good, but lots of other things are great as well, so don't worry if it's not got a particular art focus.
Thanks, Eleanor. We have got, I'm just trying to look through, see what else we've got. So Janine Catalano has asked, we do not have a permanent collection, but are at this time in need of new artwork management database for our exhibitions. Is this something that might be eligible?
Yeah, so it would be eligible, but if it's for Respond and Reimagine that you're thinking about, Janine, I would just be really clear in your application about how it connects to the or responds to the programme aim about COVID-19 response, and if it does and it fits that, then yeah, absolutely, that's something you can consider applying for funding for. And similarly, just being really clear about how it's a really high organisational priority for you. So yeah, that is eligible.
And another one from Janine, as many of the challenges that have arisen at this time relate to the Black Lives Matter campaigns and the need to increase diversity, would proposals that take this into account be considered? These are challenges that have been compounded by the difficulties of COVID.
Sarah, is that one that you would like to talk about, or would you like me to jump in?
I am happy to talk about that one. So am I muted or not muted? I'm not
No,
muted.
you're here.
No, my computer told me I was muted, but it was not true. Absolutely, there is a real intersection between the Black Lives Matter movement and the impact of COVID-19. I think projects that are addressing kind of concerns arising out of Black Lives Matter would definitely be something that would be eligible, and we would consider, particularly because there's kind of such a great intersection between both issues. So yes.
Thanks, Sarah. Any more questions? Let's have a look. I think we might have one more.
Yeah, I have one that came through in advance of the webinar about the curatorial network grants, which I thought I would just jump in on. So some practical questions from Sally Lewis from the Dancing Heritage Network. Nice to hear from you again, Sally. So you asked about case studies for the curatorial network grants. At the moment, we've got one on our website. We plan to add more because we sort of recognise that it's really useful to see details of what else we've supported. Do applicants usually have additional funding from other sources before or as they apply? We don't require this, so we can accept applications for 100% funding. We do like to understand where else you might be looking for funding, and there is a question on the application form where you can sort of give some details. In terms of what we've supported previously, some applications have some funding in place, particularly where they're sort of larger scale projects, but quite a lot of them are 100% funding. And we also are really keen to hear about any in-kind support that you're able to offer yourself. And do we expect to see supporting letters from stakeholders? I think if they are a really key part of the network or the project, it's always helpful to have letters of support, just so that we can sort of understand that everybody is fully committed to what you're hoping to undertake.
Thanks, Emma. Another one here for you, Eleanor. Becky Marley said it's slightly dull technical question, but I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's something that absolutely needs to be answered. We are a newly merged organisation which has a number of different programmes across 2 sites, including the museum and gallery. We want to apply for an R&R grant for work we are doing with the museum and gallery, but when we are filling in the application and answering questions about staff numbers, visitor numbers, etc., should they be for the entire organisation or just the museum?
Hi, Becky. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you're just focusing on funding in one of the venues that are in your service, I would encourage you to just kind of focus on the numbers connected to that. But we have also had applications from organisations that operate across, you know, maybe 3 or 4, 5, 6 different sites, and they're looking at kind of a bit more of a sort of wraparound approach to improving things at different sites as well. So that's something that we can also consider. But I think in the context that you're suggesting, I would just focus on the particular museum gallery that you're focusing the request on, and then if you want to explain a bit more about the wider service, you can do so within the body of the application or as a supporting document that just tells us a little bit more about you, if you think that that's helpful and relevant to what you're looking at.
And another just follow up from Claire Bailey. She's put their idea is around opening up the archives via digitisation, as not having physical access to this during the COVID lockdown has been really problematic for staff researchers. And there's a wealth of amazing discoveries which we think would be amazing for audiences. Are archive projects ruled out, or would they be considered?
Yeah, I mean, archives are really fascinating for us, and we have supported archives in the past, including particularly through the acquisitions programme. Where it gets a little bit tricky for us is about the nature of what is in the archive. So if an archive is primarily kind of documentary, it's less of a priority for us. It doesn't completely rule you out, but where we have supported archives previously, there's tended to be a bit more of a sort of visual focus on it rather than being an academic resource. Or a research resource, but it depends on, I think, the nature of your archive. So I think, Claire, it would be great if you could just kind of drop me a line, and I'll put my email in the chat, and then if we can maybe have a bit more of a discussion, so I understand a little bit more about your archives and what you're planning to do, because I think it's a little bit case by case with archives for us.
I think, unless
we've got another one in the general chat.
Yeah, please do.
Or did that one get answered? Okay, I think that all got answered. Yeah.
Answered. Anybody got any other burning questions while the team are all live and here? And apologies again, we're running over, but it's
Charlotte.
Yeah.
Hi, so just to say, I know that there were a couple of questions that were submitted in advance that were to do with other funding programs, and hopefully those questions will be addressed separately by the members of the team who look after those programs.
That's a good point, thanks, Sarah. We've just got another one in from Sally E. Lewis. This one is for you, Emma. Re-curatorial networks, what sort of evidence would you require to show public benefit in order to apply for a larger grant?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. You did include that in your original question to us. Sorry, I passed over it. So I think we sort of recognise that with network activity, where the main focus is about sort of supporting people working in the sector, that public benefit might be not necessarily an obvious outcome. I think we are keen for you to think about how your support for the network might benefit your members in the ways in which they work with their audiences. So, I mean, there could be very sort of direct outcomes through maybe sort of collaborative public programming. But in the event that that's not the case, and I think with an emerging network, as you're talking about here, we wouldn't have as much of an expectation that there would be sort of a demonstrable public benefit right at the beginning. So it's more thinking about further down the line what the ambition is for the network in supporting their members in working with their audiences.
Thanks, Emma. So Maria Marsh is asking, as an example, if the museum needed a collection management database before COVID, and COVID has shown how not having the collection online is a negative consequence, I'm still unsure which grant to apply for, Respond and Reimagine, or I think small project grants.
Yeah, hi Maria. So I think there is quite a lot of crossover between small project grants and Respond and Reimagine, particularly as we've sort of changed how small project grants are also kind of like thinking about COVID response support as well. So I think I would be ask you to kind of think about, you know, what are the costs involved here. So the main difference is really around thresholds. So £10,000 and above, you should probably look at Respond and Reimagine. £10,000 and below, you should probably think about small project grants. With small project grants, there is a very specific need to be really thinking about your audiences very clearly. So if that is going to be supporting an online digital program and how you connect audiences with that, I think it would be suitable for small project grants. And that would also apply to Respond and Reimagine, although there might be more of a kind of, you could also focus it very clearly on the organisational need as something very key that you need to be able to do in a safeguarding collections kind of context as well. So I think maybe just have a little think about how much money do you need, and then that will probably take you in one direction or the other.
Great, I'm just looking to see if there's anything else to do. We've got a few questions that are just sort of, as Sarah had mentioned, generally about acquisition. So again, because obviously for timing purposes today, but also the very, very specific focus on the new and adapted programme, if we've got any questions about any other aspects of the programme, specifically acquisition grants, please do channel those through to our programmes inbox, and then the relevant programme manager will be following up on those. Anything else anyone can spot? I think that's probably everything else that we've had coming through. I guess it's just a general other question for the programs team. Obviously, if somebody is applying for another grant, does that preclude them from applying for an R&R grant?
So I can take this one. If you're applying for an acquisitions grant, it does not preclude you from applying for a Respond and Reimagine grant, no.
Yeah, as kind of mentioned, the only thing that we're kind of trying to divert people in one direction or the other is the crossover between Respond and Reimagine and small project grants. So if you received a small project grant before June the 15th, that's not a particular issue for us. But if you received one in a recent funding round, we're advising just to pause at the moment until we have a clearer view on future demands, and that's as mentioned, just around capacity, rather than not wanting to do loads of more great work with you. It's just helping us manage how we can support as many organisations as possible.
Yeah. Great. Okay, well, unless anyone else has got anything else to add, we will wrap up. 16 minutes over time, but hopefully everyone has found that really informative. We've had some lovely comments through, so thank you for for being with us on the first of hopefully many more like this. And again, obviously, as we've said, we've very much focused on the sort of respond and reimagine aspect of the programme, but we will find lots more opportunities for other programme managers to be present, put faces to names, and talk through in much more detail those programmes. So I guess from my side, it's just a big thank you to the team for their time and expertise today. And obviously I wouldn't be a marketeer unless I did a final call to action, which was just to encourage everybody to sign up to our museum bulletin. This is probably the route you came to sign up for this webinar anyway, but it really is the best place on a monthly basis, as well as additional soluses that we put out, to find out about all of our latest opportunities. You'll have reminders about deadlines, new free resources, and updates around our digital services, as well as obviously everything to do with the funding programme. Another kind of extra plea is that when the webinar ends, you should also receive a link or a pop-up to a very, very short feedback survey. We'd really, really appreciate any comments. Just helps us tailor what we're doing, how we deliver it, and obviously review any new topics that you might find interesting for future sessions. So thank you, everybody. Thanks to the team.
Thank you, Charlotte, for arranging this.
It's all a bit of a pilot and new for me, but yeah, I feel more experienced now. Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.